Friends and colleagues, I'm Wes Smith, the Executive Director at ACSA, and really excited to be a part of this conversation today, a very important conversation. Before we get into it, let me wish you all well. I hope you're staying safe, protecting your wellness, and doing everything you can to prioritize self during these challenging times. As I said, though, great discussion we're going to have today. Brought to you by our amazing team at ACSA, Margarita and Josh and everybody else. You're just, you're awesome. Thank you for doing this. And we've got some dear friends participating today, the California PTA. And they're not just dear friends, they're extremely crucial and important allies and partners in successfully meeting the needs of California's 6.3 million students. And today's title, Authentic Family Engagement During These Challenging Times, is so appropriate. It's just not engagement. It's not kind of good engagement. It's authentic and meaningful engagement, which is what our allies need and deserve. And it's not just about LCAP, it's about everything we do. And so I'm excited to have them here today, to learn from them. And we'll get started by announcing their fearless leader, the Executive Director, Sherry Skelly Griffith. Welcome, Sherry.
Oh, thank you so much, Wes. I want to thank Wes first and foremost for always being there for the PTA. He welcomes us with open arms and allows us to come and share and experience what I know from my own heart is one of the very best places to be, and that is amongst ACSA leaders. And so it's nice to be back with ACSA family. You know, I've spent 13 years with you, and so thrilled to bring you these amazing presenters and panelists today to talk about what has become and always has been one of the most important issues in our system, and that is really working with our families for student success. And I know all of you on the line today here at this webinar have experienced the need to reach out to our families, because that's what's going to make our system really successful during a very difficult time. So I would like our panelists and presenters to introduce themselves as we get started. I want to first start with Celia.
Oh. Unmute. See, Josh? I was unmute. Hi, I'm Celia Jaffe. I'm president of California State PTA. Very pleased to be with you, to be partnering with ACSA, and hoping that we share some ideas with you this evening that will be helpful and really strengthen your relationships with the families in your community.
Great.
Hi, everybody. I'm Carol Green. I am the president-elect for California State PTA, and we're really glad to be here with our partners. And we know that when family schools work together, it's the kids that really win, and that's what we're hoping for. And so thanks for being here.
Great. Lisa?
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lisa Borrego, and I am the Director of Family Engagement and Partnership Development for San Juan Unified School District in Sacramento County.
Claudia.
Hello, everyone. My name is Claudia Medina. I'm with Alameda Unified School District in the San Francisco Bay Area. I oversee family engagement for the district.
And Javier.
Hello, everybody. I'm Javier Montijo. I am the 9th District parliamentarian and a grandfather of two of distant learning grandchildren and a son that is doing that as well.
That's great. So just want to call up, first of all, I want to thank Josh and Margarita for hosting us, and membership services for the excellent work that they do. And so we'll just call up the PowerPoint and get started. Want to let you know what we're going to cover today. First, we're going to have Carol Green present a really enlightening report that we did in partnership with CCEE, which were listening sessions over the course of 3 sessions after the pandemic hit, and we went out to reach out to families and parents and local PTA leaders to see how they were addressing the pandemic and distance learning, and including report recommendations. Then we're going to move into our panel, and we're going to share best tips and strategies from the key experts that you were introduced to today. So we're going to get started with Carol Green, and she's going to cover the report entitled Families Crave Information About School District Decisions. Carol, take it away.
Thanks so much. First of all, I want to let you know that this is a report that really came from our members and from all the families out there. We held 3 listening sessions. We continue to hold listening sessions, as does ACSA. And we tried to listen more than we talked, which for some of us can be an interesting dynamic. But what we did was over the May and June, we listened to what parents were experiencing and also heard from some teachers and administrators, but mostly we heard from parents. And the overriding main point, which we continue to hear to this moment in time, is that parents want information and communication. So that's why we ended up titling our report. So we can go on to the next slide. And so that's why we titled our report, Last to Know, Families Crave Information About School Decisions. And the interesting thing about this was when we would talk to administrators and we talk to superintendents or even school board members, and they would say, we are communicating with parents. We're telling them what's going on. And I had an interesting experience where I was able to speak with the Assembly Education Committee, and one of my co-presenters was the superintendent of the South Bay School District in San Diego County. And she and I spoke afterwards, and she said, you know, I thought about communicating with my parents. We sent out a survey in the beginning and asked them what they wanted. And she said, I'm kind of trying to figure out what I'm going to do before I communicate with them again. And what we kept hearing from parents is, tell us every step along the way and ask us how you can help. Not that they have not that parents have all the answers or that the administrators have all the answers, but really when we work together, we end up with a better outcome. So here are some of the key recommendations that we have from the study. Next slide. So we listened during the 2020 pandemic, and this is our report, the key recommendations coming up. Number one, on the next slide. The number one recommendation was communications, but also science-based decision-making. We want to make sure that our vulnerable children are taken care of, that there's access to education materials. As we mentioned, communication, sorry, the slide's a little wonky, but these were our main takeaways. So for communications, families want to be part of the decision-making process. And we understand that the administrators are going to make the final decision, but including the families along the way can give everyone a better idea of what's going on and helps relieve a lot of anxiety, because we all know there's so much that we don't know that's going on. Also, parents, although we ran the gamut, because when you talk to nearly 1,000 parents, you can imagine that there's about 1,000 different decisions, but overwhelmingly they wanted science-based decision-making. They wanted to make sure that their kids were going to be safe. They of course wanted to make sure that they were still learning, but they wanted to make sure that decisions were being made around science and not around pressure or different opinions from community leaders. They also wanted to make sure that our vulnerable children were taken care of. So students with special needs, students with disabilities, English language learners, some of the students that just have a harder time with a distance learning process. And then also making sure that there's access to the internet, access to computers, access to all the tools that we need. Because as much as we want to make sure that our own children do well, we really do better as a community and as a state when all the children have access. Since the original report, another comment that we've received from a lot of our families is that families need some training in order to be able to support the families. So if a teacher has 10 different platforms that they're really excited about, it can be very challenging for a parent or a grandparent or a caregiver that's trying to help those students get on, log on, and log off if there's a lot of different platforms. So the parents really suggested that that teachers and that administrators, when they're working on distance learning, make sure that the platforms were relatively consistent. If there's an opportunity to give families some training on those platforms so that they can help, that was really focused on and specified, and parents really wanted to do that. The other thing is parents, family members, and when I say parents, I'm talking about whoever that caregiver and person is in that child's life, they really want to be part of the solution. So depending on where schools are with their opening or not reopening, asking and testing things out and seeing how people feel about things, they really wanted to be part of that solution. And the other last tip was that in distance learning to have some consistency. And we realized that in May and June, there was a lot of emergency kind of learning going on that wasn't so much planned for a long period of time. So that emergency learning really, really impacted what was going on with inconsistency, and some families, you know, meeting every day and some just once a week. So they really seemed to appreciate the consistency. And of course, our key finding said that we want to all work together. So communication, making sure that the decisions are science-based, making sure we're taking care of our most vulnerable children. And if that means opening up cohorts of children that are most vulnerable first, then that's what the PTA parents we talked to were excited about. Making sure that every child has access to the tools that they need, and making sure that we're all working together. Those were the key findings of the report. And you can access the report and read it in its entirety. And you can watch the videotapes of that, the recordings of that on our website as well. So you can go to the next slide. We want to share with you these resources. We'll put them into the chat box as well. You're welcome to check them out. It's, of course, the California State PTA website. We want to be a resource for you. We also have a learning library, a resource library, and up-to-date information about what's going on with schools and COVID. And we hope that that'll be a great resource for all of you, administrators, parents, everyone. So go to the next slide. And last but not least, and this isn't really a sales pitch, but I just want to invite you to join the PTA. You can scan the QR code and we'll get you to our join page where you can find a PTA near you. This is just an invitation, because we know that when we work together and the important work that we're doing, a lot of the fun things PTA gets to do right now can't happen. But most of the important work is still going on. So we appreciate your partnership, and we appreciate all the work that we can do together to make sure that our kids are really getting through this challenging time with the best possible results. So thank you so much. And that's, you're welcome to read the rest of our report, but those are the key findings, and thanks for listening.
Great. Thank you so much, Carol. And we'll go to the next slide because I know that Wes is going to want to recognize an important partner.
Yeah, I just want to thank Horace Mann for all of their support and help. As many of you know, they do a lot of work in retirement investments. What you may not know is they have a great program for paying off student loan debt. So if any of you have that thing called student loan debt, they can help with it. And I think there's going to be a little video for Horace Mann right now.
Hi, we're Horace Mann. Our mission is to help educators protect the big stuff with auto, home, life, and supplemental health insurance. Plus, we provide retirement plans to help you reach that never-ending weekend of your dreams. And it's our local, knowledgeable agents who bring you these programs packed with educator perks in an easy-to-understand way. Continue the conversation with your local agent or learn more at horacemann.com.
Horace Mann is giving a raffle away. So if we could pull up our raffle wheel, we will select a winner from the attendee roster. And Horace Mann is today giving away a backpack filled with Horace Mann goodies.
And Margarita, I did want to see if there were any questions in the chat, if we could offer a couple to Carol now. And if there are more than a couple, we can also add those to the end of the Q&A while people are doing the raffle.
There's a spin.
Yay, Maisha Britt. We will make sure Horace Mann has your name and contact information and your mailing address so you can get your Horace Mann backpack filled with goodies. Thank you.
Yay.
And Sherry, there are no questions yet in the chat box.
Okay, well, I would really love to encourage all of you to put your questions in the chat box. We really want to make this interactive. You've got some amazing experts tonight with you in the area of family engagement. So what we'll do now, we'll go to the next slide. We're going to turn to the panel that you were introduced to earlier, and we're going to talk a little bit about really the strategies and tips that they want to provide all of you out there. I know we have parents and we have administrators who are eager to learn in this area. So it's called From Compliance to Connection, Practicing Authentic Family Engagement, Strategies and Resources. And I'm going to ask a series of questions of our panelists. So if you would all just get prepared, I'll look for you in the small boxes to call on. Our first question for the panel tonight, as you recall, it's Celia, Lisa, Javier, and Claudia. The first question is, the need for quality family engagement and communication is needed now more than ever. Please share what you consider the top 3 priorities for school administrators to practice during these challenging times. And I'm going to start with Celia.
Thanks, Sherry. So I'm going to lead off somewhat of Carol's presentation, our findings from talking to parents, that the idea of communication about decisions is really paramount in everyone's mind. And some of the aspects of that I'd like to mention are that even telling the community when the decision is going to be made and what things are being considered, just that much, like progress report. We will be back to you by a week from Friday with the plan for this. Any tidbits along the way really help families to feel like they know what's going on and that they're being considered. They're communicating with them is a priority, and also with that kind of stability, and is another really important aspect of what's going on during the pandemic, right? It's so discombobulating and anxiety producing. And so if decisions can be made for chunks of time, this is our plan and we will reevaluate it starting in January, or we will, we can guarantee that this is going to be the schedule and how we're going to do things for, a good chunk of time, because each change has to be implemented within the family, and they have so many other pieces going on. So stability and communication there is very, very important. And also, then I'll say that's a couple, and one more is, we try to assure families that they need to support their child's learning, but they don't need to be the teacher. This is what we've tried to help our families know is you're not the teacher, you're the supporter, the cheerleader, the creating the situation that helps the child learn. But in COVID teaching, they're really feeling the pressure. So opportunities to support the parents in how they're handling distance learning with their kids, to think of the parents as a constituency that needs some support and some training too. I think would be my other priority.
Great. Thank you so much, Celia. So Lisa, you are on the ground pivoting to work in the community in a very different way in San Juan Unified here in Sacramento County. Share with us what you think are the top 3 priorities for administrators as an administrator yourself.
So first and foremost, I'd like to thank all of the administrators and educational leaders on the call and our parent leadership as well for all the work that's been done throughout the state. It is an incredible, heroic effort that we're all trying to do for our students within the state of California. And it's something, it's a first, nothing we've ever been through before. And so being able to acknowledge that we are learning this together is very important, because being able to show that vulnerability to your families and your community, making them aware that you are equally trying to navigate this process for the best interest of their kids is really important. Being able to show that that strength and leadership, that while we're trying to determine what the next best model is or what the next reopening date might be, that we ourselves understand that this requires some grace on all of our parts and some patience and understanding. So I would mention a couple of things, and speaking specifically around our vulnerable populations and our students. Make sure not to make assumptions that all families are familiar with how to use technology. One of the main issues that came up and continues to be part of our ongoing data collection is the digital literacy gap that exists for our families. So they may have a Google address, a Gmail account, but that doesn't mean they know how to use Google Classroom or the suite of offerings that is now being part of an educational platform for their kids. So not making assumptions that all families know how to use the educational platforms is important, because it also allows you to ask different questions when you are engaging with those families within your school setting. One of the other things is absolutely agree, consistent communication, frequent communication. If you were a principal that was already holding coffee with the principal weekly or doing some form of a newsletter, it's very important that you maintain those ongoing regular communications for that consistency and that stability for your community. School sites remain the most local, connected first line of relationships, like teachers with our families. So being able to have that consistency communication is critical. And then also, we've really heard a lot from families that they are missing that interaction to engage with their school communities, whether it's through fundraising, through PTA, or their back to school nights. So even in our efforts to be focused on what that instructional plan looks like and how we're going to reduce that learning loss, it is important to acknowledge that you still have a community that you're trying to keep connected. And so being able to celebrate through your back to school nights or having your first quarter celebrations with students is really critical to maintain that sense of social emotional connection and engagement. So those are a few items I would mention.
That's great, Lisa. Thank you so much. Javier, you are a local school site PTA leader in San Diego County. You're a parent, you're a grandparent, you are working with your grandkids today in distance learning. What are your top 3 priorities for recommendation that administrators can practice during these challenging times?
Thank you. And I have listed here because of, like you said, working with my grandchildren here at the house, and also my son who's in college and doing the remote learning. He is one of the things that we're experiencing is we reach out to the teachers because they're their first point of contact when we have questions. However, that is not happening. Open, honest, and clear communication. Unfortunately, teachers are receiving the information when we ask at the same time that the parents receive it. So this makes it frustrating, as I said, because the teachers are our first point of contact and communication. And another is establishing and maintaining a fun, interesting, and challenging curriculum between the parents, students, and the teachers. Because we see that when my grandchildren are here and my son, I see the interaction that he's having with others on the computer or whatever device that they're on. And when they lose track, we are able to kind of guide them, as one of the panelists said, that it's not the parents or whoever the caregiver is to provide the lesson or take the teaching, is to get the children, the students, to pay attention and ask that question, raise their hand on the device. And if they don't know how to use that, we can at least communicate with the teacher on the background and get her to reach out to the student at that time. And then realizing that less resources should not equate to more production. Because of the lack of those resources, I know that they're falling behind, and it almost seems as though, you know what, let's do as much as we can to get them up to speed. And that does not help. It hinders, and it puts a stress on our children as well, and also us. And we don't want to show that stress to them, showing that it's you know, overbearing. And we try to do our best to thin that out.
Great. Thank you so much. That's so insightful. So Claudia, your school district has been doing some deep equity work for many, many years. You really reach out to families, numerous languages, you practice family engagement, and now you're also practicing it in a very challenging time. What would be your top 3 priorities to recommend for best practices for school administrators?
Absolutely. Thank you very much for having me, and welcome everyone. Thank you for making the time to be with us tonight. I want to point out, and thanks for that shout out, Cherry, is we have been using the School Smarts program by the California State PTA, which is a comprehensive 7-week program that allows us to serve families on how to navigate the public school system. And so we've had that program for over 8 years. And what that has done, and this is recommendation number 1, is if you haven't started, start now and plan long term. We were lucky to have it in place because now we leverage our multilingual School Smarts community, which is in 5 languages, Chinese, Spanish, Vietnamese, Arabic, and Tagalog, and English. So our top 6 languages in our school district. Those teams went from, or participants in those sessions went from participating to coordinating to now training to now working in our school district. They have translated and disseminated the tutorials on how to navigate during the pandemic. So whether they are tutorials on how to log into Google Classroom or how to get into Zoom etiquette, all of that has been translated to support families. And those same groups have affinity language groups, whether it's on Facebook or WhatsApp, where they continue to disseminate information. One of the priorities that Carol mentioned earlier was communication. We cannot make assumptions that everybody processes information in the same way. So leveraging social media and social circles in their affinity groups is going to get you a lot more of the connection needed right now. Number 2 is leveraging after-school programs and family liaisons. No one is as connected to your families as are your most trusted frontline people. We cannot make assumptions that you know, families are just picking up information and processing it. Actually, you need somebody that is a trusted partner already in place to support with this, as Lisa mentioned, the social emotional learning or the navigation through this difficult time, tutoring that can come from the after school programs that is much needed right now, and enrichment, whether it's activities that they could do to support each other. Those teams are crucial and they have been extremely helpful for us right now. And third is continue strengthening your partnerships. And I'll use one very particular example, and that's our PTA in Alameda has, during asynchronous learning time, what some sites, and this has to do a lot with equity and inclusion, some of our sites have more resources than others. And so what some of our PTAs have done is they pulled some of their money and resources to provide asynchronous learning opportunities for all children across the schools in Alameda. And so that has created a sense of belonging, a sense of contribution, clearly also a sense of awareness of what is possible with resources. So that's a big awareness in our community. And so other partners can include your foundations. They have supported us with opening learning centers, getting headsets for kids from our free and reduced lunch criteria that have participated in these learning centers that need these resources. The food bank, so one of our foundations is actually providing cash for rent and bills. So it's harnessing the power that already exists, but now collectively orchestrating it so that it's centralized in a way that everybody's aware of what we're up to.
Great. Thank you so much, Claudia. So I want to ask a question. It might seem a little early, but I think we're learning so much during the challenge of the pandemic about what has worked and what needs to change. And so I want to ask the panelists, what really do you see? What are you learning from your work or your experience as a parent or grandparent that you know needs to change post-pandemic when we get back to, we hope, our regular experience of the classroom and the school site and the district and the county? What can we do differently from your experience in your work? And I'm going to start with Lisa this time from San Juan.
We were on a trajectory within our district we were very engaged in collaborative discussions interdepartmentally. And I want to just piggyback on what Claudia said. The importance of partnerships within your own system are as critical as the external partnerships that you can receive within your community. And I have to say what I've enjoyed seeing and am excited to see continue post-pandemic is the collaboration that has taken place between departments, whether it's MTSS developing videos to help present information about routines and how to establish a learning space within the home, from our special education department who is providing information and support for our families on how to navigate the distance learning landscape, to our equity department who is working on our 8 points of equity within our community. It's just exciting to see the way that we are innovating and really working together for the common good to help support our entire community. So I'm looking forward to that continuing. But I've also really experienced, and perhaps this is not new for some of you, but having transitioned into the virtual landscape from a family engagement perspective, we have held numerous workshops in a variety of different topics, as Claudia has mentioned, as well as had some ongoing community conversations with our Spanish-speaking families, with our special education families, with our students and families from low socioeconomic communities. And our participation rates have gone up significantly. So we are seeing that virtual landscape is another option, another alternative, another way to engage with families of whom maybe traditionally there's conversations where our families, maybe they wouldn't come, but you know, folks have a device, whether or not it's a phone or a laptop, or some kind of an iPad or some sort of devices such as that. We're seeing many of our community from all different backgrounds engage in the virtual learning landscape. So we're excited to keep that going. We've already committed to a hybrid model, even as we go back in our family engagement work. So that is really critical. And then, you know, maintaining and increasing and improving our communication is something we should always be doing as an organization. This, I think, has really highlighted how important it is to Celia's point and to what was shared earlier, is being explicit and understanding that our families appreciate and engage and are able to offer that same support to their students if we are keeping them communicated with throughout the process. We had one meeting with our superintendent's parent advisory committee recently where we were talking about the return to school. And what was really eye-opening for our superintendent and many of our cabinet members was our parents were saying, as you're determining what we might be doing as options and models, it's very important that you give us examples of what it would look like. So when you speak about a hybrid model, in-person learning, what does it look like? How does the day start? Where do the kids go? How do they eat lunch? Where do they go into recess? So being able to provide some of those details really does help our families, including our families who are second language learners, because their concerns may be, they may have a different lens related to health or cultural components or fears that they are not familiar with within our own American school system. So just again, increasing that continued communication, I'm excited that we're committed to doing.
That's great, Lisa. So I'm going to open this up to Celia, and Carol, please join too if you have some thoughts. Post-pandemic, what are we learning? What are parents and families, PTA leaders across the state learning that they really want to carry forward post-pandemic? What would be your recommendations?
Well, one of the things that our PTA units at local schools are finding is that virtual meetings get a lot more people there than their in-person meetings got. And, you know, it's hard to separate between that everybody just wants that information about what's going on in this pandemic versus in a virtual meeting, I can still be taking care of the baby and cooking the dinner and whatever, you know, other things can still go on, so it's more convenient. And that question, in the past, we've had thoughts that virtual meetings might disinclude people without as much technology, which is, of course, an issue to be aware of. But just the fact that we can get that there's that much attendance in virtual meetings is an eye-opener. And I think in general, the biggest change on both sides, I would think school employees and families, is that idea that there's a handout off. Here's my kid, you take care of them for the next few hours. Okay, here's your kid back, and that's the exchange. You know, anybody who's been feeling that's how it works has had their eyes opened really to you know, families appreciating how much is being taught in every grade, you know, how high the expectations are of children, and how hard you know, teachers and administrators and so on work for that, and for the professionals to be seeing to what degree families are multitasking and trying to do so much as well as support their kids. So I think that kind of mutual awareness has grown exponentially during this time, and that will be a lasting kind of change of point of view.
I think we've come up with some creative solutions, as Celia was saying about meetings that are virtual, being able to, you know, be at your child's soccer game and attend the PTA meeting at the same time, which I know we're not playing soccer yet, but I know the hope is there that we'll get back to some of those regular kinds of things. I think that parents and schools want options. They want to have a lot of different choices. I mean, personally, I'm craving being with people other than my husband, whom I love, but, you know, it'd be great to just be in a room. I'd love to hug all of you and say hi and sit down and chat. But I think that sort of we're reinventing the options. So there's the virtual meetings, but there's also the virtual readings, the learning about what's going on in school more than just at a parent-teacher conference. Parents and caregivers can kind of peek in on what's going on, and more than just what's going on, what the teacher's relaying, but how's their child doing with that information. And I think that one of the things that can come out of this is parents might have some concerns or some things that they're noticing. And so we want to keep those relationships open between the parents and the teacher. So you can say, you know, it doesn't seem like my child's reading as well as the other kids in the class, because if you're not volunteering in the class, you have nothing to compare it to. So I think there are some new options. And certainly for PTAs, we're hearing about virtual talent shows and virtual spelling bees and recess on Zoom. I don't know if any of you have all done this, but you get on, you have the meeting, you're off and you leave. and people want to just say, hey, Claudia, how's it going? You know, I like your new top or whatever. So kind of leaving a little bit of time to just have that friendly interaction on our video calls is interesting for both kids and parents.
Great. Javier, you are distance learning at home right now as a grandparent and parent. What do you want to see post-pandemic? What is needed for you to continue success with your family?
Well, number one is to continue the transparency, because we all need to be to feel that we are being informed and are included in everything that is going on. Number two, hoping that there's no unilateral decision making, because again, we're all in this together. And one of the things that I have learned as a grandparent is my wife and I have seen the challenges that our first grade granddaughter has in dealing with the various apps. And they need to understand that we have a various level of grade levels that we're dealing with, and they are all on the same level of learning. They're all on the computer, they're all trying to do the same thing, but it's completely different for each one. And you know, my hat goes off to all of them for their advancement and also their efforts that they're doing this, and they're coming around really good. And also the communication with the teachers and the respect for them on what they do. It's being on the other side, as was mentioned, where we as the parents are now taking on that side where we understand or should understand and see how much the teachers are doing and have to deal with, because in some instances it's just as busy now as it would have been in the classroom. So you know, that's what I feel. Thank you.
That's great. Thank you. Very comprehensive recommendations. Claudia, post-pandemic, what should we take away from this?
Well, we got to acknowledge that post-pandemic is not necessarily going to be, oh, we go back to the same, right? We're pivoting. And so that's causing general angst. And as Javier said, app confusion. I think some of the things that we are becoming really aware of, and the number one things that we hear from our families is, will my child be grade level appropriate? And so that's a definite conversation that we are having around how are we going to support especially our children who we know would have been behind and would be behind. We're talking equity and inclusion again. And so that's going to be a key assessment that we will continue. There is decision-making capabilities that we have to increase. We're seeing the potential opportunity to combine some of our ELACs district-wide, at least elementary. It's a conversation I'm pushing for, where we can do a general ELAC booster, where we can have my multilingual team come and be that form of connection, so that then they could connect them to an arm of social media so that they stay connected and we grab more people. So it's like, how do we leverage resources, build capacity, and increase decision-making capabilities, especially of our English language learning families. One of the key ones for me is the importance of teacher and family relationships. But we know, and I'm so glad I'm on a call with administrators, is that you're seeing that right now. Your biggest daily the time invested is in solving miscommunication, and so that may be an opportunity for us to continue to improve those relationships. And lastly, the PTA, PTAs being our #1 partners, but also increasing the diversity of our PTAs. I know that I'm pushing a lot on how do we make it more inclusive of families that do represent your school sites. And this is a critical time to self-reflect on that.
That's great. Well, I know we are getting close to time. Our last question, I want to remind everyone in the audience that we do have all of the resources in the chat as well as in the PowerPoint. All of our partners have provided some excellent resources. So what I'd like the panelists to do now is actually not go through all the resources and strategies and activities, but pick one, if you could, tonight that you would really like to emphasize for our audience that you feel has been powerful in the work that you've done. So I'm going to start with Javier and let us know what you've been doing as a PTA leader and what you think your school has done that's been powerful in terms of authentic family engagement.
I can speak more as a grandfather rather than what they have been doing at school, because I've taken a step a little further and tried to make it interesting for them here. And so what I did was build a station for them. I don't know if anybody could see it, but I built a station with all of these, the clipboard in the back, the folders to have all of the necessary items that they need for class. And it helped, and it gave them that privacy that they were still a part of something, and it was good for them to do that, and it really helped them a lot. So they still had their space that was theirs, and it kind of took away that we're still at home. And so that was one of the big takeaways from that, and trying to help them. So that was our part in doing that.
Awesome. You should copyright that. That is excellent.
Javier, you're going to make those for all the 3 million kids, right?
Yeah,
I would.
That's great. So I'm going to turn to Claudia. What is that one thing that you want to describe? We have all the resources, so we're going to make sure that all of our participants tonight get everything, but what's a big one for you?
Well, for me, it's leveraging my multilingual team. That's my go-to team. I recommend highly that each district or each community identify who their A team is, and you take very good care of them, because during these adverse times, they need you to be their solid person, and they will go and work really hard for you. But see them, acknowledge them, thank them, really speak the hero's language. We're living in an odyssey right now, and we need to acknowledge the heroes in our lives. And those are your front line. In my case, my multilingual team.
That's excellent, excellent. So Celia or Carol, can you tell us, what comes to mind for you that you think is powerful coming from the PTA right now?
Well, I think our longstanding traditions are serving us well, but also our new ways of reaching directly to local parents have been working really well during this crisis. We had about 30 different sessions in August of all kinds of informational and instructional webinars, everything from how to be a PTA leader to how to deal with your child's stress and grief during the pandemic, or how mental health issues or teen, all kinds of things that just parents all throughout the state would be interested in. And we got huge attendance on those, straight to local parents. We often are communicating with our own leaders, and then they're communicating with their local members. And this was a huge service that was really well responded to, and I think means a lot. And in case this is my last chance, I want to say one other thing about communication, which is the beginning of everything that goes on with parents and schools, with families and schools. And I just want the little nugget for everybody: when you're saying communication, make sure you mean two-way communication, that it's not all about how do we get this information to families, it's what are we learning back from families. So communication always being two-way is my other thing.
That's great. Thank you, Celia.
I
Lisa.
would,
Go ahead, Carol.
I just was going to say I would echo that, and that's why we learned so much from our listening tours. I would say for resources, the California State PTA website has a lot of our resources there, but realize that all of our members are really our resources, and we value them and their leadership and their opinions, and that's how we come to some of these decisions. It's just not Sherry and Celia and I sitting in a room, because we can do that, but it's what we get from all of our members. And I would never interrupt Lisa Borrego, so go Lisa.
Lisa.
No, I would echo everything everyone is saying, and particularly the listening sessions. We facilitated several parent and student listening sessions, so I would really encourage that as a significant part of that feedback loop. Last year, we established cultural brokers similar to Claudia's staff, who are individuals representing various groups within our community, who are linked directly to our families and our students within our local schools. And they collected so much information regarding the experiences they were having in distance learning, and also how this information could help develop our learning continuity plan, which was completed, as well as what will inform our local control accountability plan. So again, working with your frontline workers to support your students, and especially your students. We work on behalf of our students, what they need and how we are standing in our spaces because of them. So making sure we're including our students in those voices is really critical. So engaging with those young people and with their families is important, and creating that very clear feedback loop, and having that feedback loop be seen by our families and our students is very valuable. So listen, learn, and engage.
Awesome. Well, I don't know how much time we have for questions, but I just really, before we lose Wes, I really want to thank this panel and presenters tonight: Claudia, Celia, Javier, Carol, Lisa. You guys, awesome. I hope everyone has really learned a lot tonight. I want to thank Margarita and Josh for doing an amazing job. Membership services go. And I just want you to know I'm still a card-carrying lifelong member of ACSA. Here's my hat. So I love my ACSA family. So I'm going to say thanks to everyone and turn it back over to Wes.
Thanks, Sherry. Great hat, by the way. You never have to worry about losing me. It's like that movie line, "You can't quit me," right? You're never losing Wes. Hey, I want to thank this group. Celia, Carol, Claudia, Javier, Lisa, Sherry. We've heard from parents, grandparents, advocates, experts, and some great quotes. I wrote down, "Speak the hero's language." That moved me. Also, and this is something we've said at ACSA forever, we should never have a conversation where we don't mention students more than we mention anything else. And I think it was Lisa that said, let's include our student voices. That's why we're here, for heaven's sakes. I added that, for heaven's sakes, but I thought it was just a great point. And so, to our friends and allies at PTA, thank you for sharing that information. Again, there's a difference between surveying parents and guardians and authentically and meaningfully engaging them in the work, right? And so what you've shared today will help us be better about that. Again, everybody stay safe, be well. We're so grateful for our friends and allies, and we're grateful for all of you out there in the field right now, sacrificing so much to ensure the futures of each and every one of our students. So thank you all.
Great. Thank you all very much.
Thank you. Thanks for the opportunity, everyone.
Thank you.
Stay safe.
Have a great night.